And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Tesch. I am CEO of RCN Capital. Thank you for joining our panel today, Rehab or Renovation, Fix and Flip Trends. So we have had a great series of conference calls over the past 5 or 6 weeks. Some really tremendous information has gone out across the United States, and today's panel will be no exception. I was just mentioning to the panel, this topic is timely. Certainly in our COVID era that we are in today, dealing with all the challenges that myself as a lender and certainly the panelists as experts in their own respective areas are dealing with. But aside from COVID, fix and flip is hot. It's been just a tremendous business model for so many investors across the nation, and really looking forward to getting into detail today with our esteemed panel. So with that said, I am going to introduce Eric Anderson, Associate Merchant Renovation Services. And Eric, before you get into things, you are all things Home Depot. Are you wearing the apron right now?
Hey, thanks for the question. I am not. I do have one with me, but we've been working remotely for a couple of weeks now, and the family thinks it's a little weird if I run around the house in an apron all by myself.
Well said. Hey. Well said, Eric. Go right ahead.
Hey, I'm 20 years with Home Depot. I've spent about the last 15 years in our various services business, both in the ones that are consumer-facing, that you would see if you ever walk through a store, and the last 7 or 8 here in our business-to-business type services organization, helping to repair homes and put them back on the market.
Appreciate that so much. Thanks, Eric. Next up is Kelly Brook, CEO of Property Masters out of Atlanta. Welcome aboard, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. I am the CEO of Property Masters. I've been with the company about 15 years since its inception. We are a full-service renovation firm specializing in adding value in the SFR space, REO properties. We work with institutional and private investors and REO. We're really getting more into this fix and flip mentality now, and it's been really exciting over the last few years to see how the journey has gone, and the average ticket increasing in renovation scope. So our main focus is figuring out what our clients' strategies are for their homes and figuring out how to increase that ROI and give them the best finished product.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Next up, Brandon Guzman, President, MFS Supply. Hello, Brandon. You might be on mute. Just click your mute button, Brandon.
I was on mute. Sorry. National wholesale distributor of all things renovation. So, I've been with the business since our company's inception in 2008. We were founded with the concept of servicing REO contractors in 2007, 2008, 2009, as the housing market, did crash. And on the ramp up of the housing market, we've tried to be at the forefront of servicing clients in all things renovation. So that's multifamily contractors, fix and flippers, REO to rental, and your fix and flippers, as well as your everyday contractors that are doing home remodels and home renovations. So we've been in business for the past 13 years, and we continue to find new products to cater to our customers in each of those spaces.
Fantastic, Brandon. Thank you so much. And finally, Tim Rath, AVP Business Development with, of course, Safeguard. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, great. Thanks, Jeff. Safeguard Properties. We're a nationwide provider of property preservation, maintenance, inspections. Mostly have always been in the default mortgage space, and we've now moved into the single-family and multifamily rental space as well. So I've been with the company for about 9 years. Spent most of my first part of my career here dealing with our awesome vendor network, recruiting, and just managing them, and now moved over to business development. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tim. And once again, my name is Jeffrey Tesch. I'm CEO of RCN Capital. We are a nationwide lender in the space of non-owner occupied residential housing. So we do short-term bridge lending on fix and flip, as well as longer-term rental aggregation portfolio loans, as well as single asset. A little bit about RCN. I founded this company back in 2010, coming out of the last crisis. And what we really wanted to do was start a private lending company that would be really taking the hard money out of the shadows and professionalize investor lending. We started very humbly in Connecticut outside of New York City, and slowly but surely became a national brand, putting in place best practices for not only our investors, but as well as our customers, all the way from Connecticut to California, Florida to Washington. So pleasure to be on here. As always, a big thank you to REI Inc. for putting this panel together. Really excited to get right into it today. And let's do just that. So starting with return on investment. We are seeing, and we've seen this as a lender at RCN, many different trends in the marketplace as to renovations for how the investors are really getting the best bang for their buck. And of course, as always, a lot of this is geography and the comps in your neighborhood, but technology in different ways that investors are finding to get certainly a bigger return on their cash on cash. So Kelly, I'd love to start with you today. Certainly you as a renovation guru in the area, what are you seeing from your customers today, and how has it changed over the past few years?
Well, that's actually an excellent lead into this. As far as overall trending, we have seen really in the past 18 months, the renovation scopes greatly increase, both on item and, total ticket amount. Buyers, particularly millennials, it's sort of this HGTV worthy home that they're wanting, a turnkey home. So where we used to see, 2012, 2013, the height after the last housing crisis, our average ticket was $5,500. We're looking at close to $16,000, $17,000 in average scope. And currently right now, about 15 to 20% of our open work orders over the last 18 months have been in excess of 30 grand. So that is a big change from 5 years ago. And obviously, you turn on HGTV, you see gray. Everybody's sort of moving away from that traditional beige and tan that gave people that feel this is a foreclosure, this is an REO property. People are moving into those gray schemes, and there's been a lot of talk that, gray is going out, but we think gray is here to stay for a while. So we're sticking with a lot of the gray schemes, switching out a lot of those beige elements in favor of LVT and LVP over carpet, particularly if you're doing a buy and hold strategy, because as you know, carpet gets dirty. A lot of people are turned off by carpet now. So we're finding a lot of our investors are wanting to go in with the LVT or LVP, and the price on that has really gone down over the past year. Natural elements are huge right now: granite, stone, concrete, natural woods, butcher block countertops, obviously granite, polished concrete floors in certain areas are very prevalent. We actually cover, our span is pretty large. I refer to us as semi-national. So we have to keep up with trends in New Jersey and South Florida and the rural South. And obviously there's a lot of differences there in what buyers prefer. But these are generalizations of things that are, hot in the market. Contrast, dark flooring on light walls, darker accents in the kitchen. So give an accent to an island, a different color than the wall cabinets, and a lighter contrasting countertop. Just contrast of color to add pop and interest. Elements of technology, again, just touching on the millennial set. The millennials that are now entering looking for homes, Nest thermostats, security systems, automatic lighting. These are things that millennial home buyers are attracted to. Smart appliances. These elements of technology that you can market your home as a smart home are very attractive and will help set it apart for relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of the renovation budget. You know, time is money. Less time on the market is money.
Oh, that's very interesting, Kelly. Now, let me sort of spin the question a little bit. Are you seeing, and you gave some great stats on what you're seeing percentage-wise spend, but as a percentage of the acquisition price, are these rehabs today being considered a heavier rehab, or are they just sort of beefing up the amenities inside? And I guess really what I'm trying to say by this is, are they tearing out sheetrock? Are they, are they going right down to the studs, or are they just adding additional amenities to really give that pop that you were speaking about?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, and it just depends on, the age of the home and the area. The most important thing when you're acquiring a property is to know your market and know your buyer. So you have to know the target demographic that's going to be looking in this area and sort of try to drill down on what those tastes are. See what other homes are selling in the market, and not just comps as far as value, but what people are looking for. Talk to different people in real estate in the area and find out what people are looking for. So in some instances, yes, you're having to add some bells and whistles so you can compete with traffic. And also, as far as knowing your market, if there's a lot of new construction going on, then you're going to have to look at adding some custom elements to make that property attractive. Hey, look at this home, and put, our home is a turnkey renovation. It's not brand new construction, but you can move in right away. And there's those custom elements that are going to attract people. We always encourage our investors, obviously, to tackle the big things first. Make sure you have a sound structure. If the roof is 2 years or less roof life, replace the roof. Take care of those things first that buyers don't want to move in and have to worry about. You want to give them a turnkey home. But we're definitely seeing more of an emphasis put on the extras, the bells and whistles. And we try to get creative to sort of nail down, obviously, what their goal is as far as ROI, and then work on things based on that local area and what our local project managers' knowledge is of that area, and picking sort of the bells and whistles that will attract consumers in that market to that property.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, Eric, I'm going to throw it right to you. Kelly certainly mentioned, so many different trends that she's seeing from what the flipper customer is attempting to accomplish, whether it be granite, polished concrete, going with the dark floors, and, some of the new technology items, Nest thermostats, automatic lights, all great points. So what are you seeing, Eric, going out the door to your investor customers?
I think Kelly did a great job kind of covering the gambit of the things that are hot and happening in the markets that we're working in. Also, the two big kind of thematic trends that we're experiencing are, number one, can you get the repair done quickly? Because as Kelly mentioned, time is money, and days under construction are days off the market. Number two is, can you minimize my exposure on maintenance costs for the home in the long term? So some of those finishes that are a little more durable, a little longer lasting, definitely flying off the shelf, both in the investment space and in the homeowner space. And then, the third thing that we're seeing a lot of is maximizing the living area of the home and kind of thinking about the living space and the entertaining space beyond the traditional kitchen or living room areas. Is there a patio that you can maximize? Something cool you can do in the backyard space? We've done our first couple of outdoor living kitchen type scenarios. Those are things where I think they're good for curb appeal, and if you consider people are going to be spending more time at home given the recent experiences, they're attractive to emerging buyers.
Yeah, see, that's super interesting. Now, from an outdoor space and maximizing the return on investment, especially for the fix and flip customer, what sort of trends are you seeing in that? In other words, when somebody looks at that outside patio existing or thinking about adding one, what does it look like, and what are some best practices for the investment community to really beef up that return on investment?
Yeah, so I think the the previous experience around a lot of the distressed asset space or the traditional investment space was looking at the outdoors and saying, is it safe? Like, is there a tree that's going to fall on somebody, or is the fence secured, or is the pool filled in, or is this area generally safe to be? And now the question you should ask when you're walking around back there is, would somebody want to be here? And there are some very simple things you can add in terms of like built-in seating or fire pit or some canopy cover, things like that do not add a lot to the overall renovation, but you're effectively adding hundreds of square feet to the place in the home that can be lived in and used. And that's a big value grab in what we're seeing out there.
Yeah, and this is a trend, I would guess, Eric, that didn't just start yesterday. My guess, and you can comment on this quickly before I move on, but my guess is that this trend has been building.
No, you're right. And you can see it in any of the showrooms you walk through, whether it's your local Home Depot store or other folks who participate. The showrooms for outdoor living are definitely on the increase. It's very vogue to have various methods to prepare your meat outside. And yeah, you're right. It's been on the incline, and we think it's going to accelerate as we spend more time at home.
Sure. Now, Brandon, as Kelly mentioned, a lot of different sort of aspects to the renovation to think about, whether it be going with that proper color scheme, spending the extra money for an upgraded kitchen countertop, and then, of course, the technology. You, as a major supplier in the investment space, what sort of trends are you seeing on the various aspects of the renovation?
So I guess I'll talk with probably one of the more expensive parts of the renovation and start with the kitchen. And I think in kitchen, Kelly was right on point. I think that the grays are definitely in style. And as far as cabinets are concerned, the whites and grays for us probably equals about of our full cabinet line mix, which there's dark shakers, there's some off-white options. It's white is bar none a top mover, probably allocates about 60% of our cabinet business is just in whites. And it's about as white as it gets, so stark white. And what's been an upcoming trend for us has been grays and lighter grays, not something that's too dark, but some lighter grays that go with a lot of other color tones. So we've seen a lot of that happen on the kitchen. But from our standpoint, what we've seen is there is a tremendous amount of options now available to cut down costs. So we have certain clients that go into rental properties and are trying to maintain the kitchen cabinets. So what they'll do potentially today, we offer refacing options. So there's some really good high-end looking feel to not replacing full box cabinets, which is hard for me to say because I prefer that investors do that. But I think that in the rental space where you're buying at a little bit of a premium today and you're trying to just lightly upgrade and save on costs, we've seen a really large group of, normally that's for multifamily, but in single family, we've seen people convert over options as long as the existing cabinets, the bones of the cabinet, I guess that, your carcasses are somewhat intact. You can put a really good refacing look on the cabinet for a fraction of the cost, and the new renter comes in there with a brand new look and feel of that kitchen, and it might cost you $500 to $600 compared to $4,000 to $5,000. So we are seeing a trend like that pretty much start to take place in markets that historically just went full box.
See, that's interesting. And you mentioned rental, and I think, that's something that we want to think about versus just straight up fix and flip versus I'm quite sure today on the call, we have any number of folks that are investors that are considering either model. I know at RCN, we have any number of people that go into their rehab, and then they run their numbers post-closing, and then they make a decision. Am I going to flip this and take the short money, or am I going to put this into a rental loan? But really, best practices is to think about a durability and how you're going to set up your rehab. What sort of trends are you seeing in folks that are doing that certain rental model today?
I think in the past, I look at there's been such a very good off-brand private label products that have come to market when it comes to your lighting and plumbing options, in which historically, you would buy a Moen plumbing fixture, and I'm sure Eric can speak to the Premier lines that Home Depot offers. Those are really good quality products. We offer one-stock plumbing and lighting, and the quality is there. Similar factories are making the product. It just comes at a fraction of the price point. And as long as the guarantees and warranties are intact with what a major brand would charge, you can save a significant amount of money going those options, and it still gives you the same look and feel.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think Tim, this is a great segue for you. Certainly with your broad footprint across the nation, thinking about how you're going to complete this renovation, whether it be a rental or a flip, what are you seeing with your customers across the nation?
One of the big trends I think that has been going on for a few years, and obviously is technology and just the use of the mobile application. So for our clients that may be managing properties or have purchased properties in other states or distances, especially right now with the COVID travel limitations, the technology that around having an app that can give them the photos and videos and details that they need to manage, and make decisions about the renovation has been really crucial for us and for the clients. So I know a lot of times our vendors will be prompted in certain cases to take videos, and those videos sometimes tell a lot better picture or tell a lot better story rather than pictures or a description of somebody over the phone. So that's been one of the big things for us that we've been concentrating on and that we've seen in the market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, really from a maintenance perspective, a lot of our guests today are considering, what type of sort of long-term renovations that will hold up over time. Are your customers, diving into certain different aspects, and Kelly touched on them, right? Are they putting in the Nest thermostats? Are they thinking about, adding a higher grade kitchen setup that maybe has some more durability over time, whether it be flip or rental? Are you seeing any of that with your clientele?
Yeah, I think along those lines, I think one of the things that comes to mind first is just the access solutions that they're using right now. So there's a number of different Bluetooth and cellular access systems that our customers are putting on their property. It's becoming more and more popular, where either if it's a situation where they want to show the property to flip it, or even if they have a rental candidate, the person can come up and use their phone to gain access to the property, and it tracks them. So that would be one of the big ones that I'm seeing right now from our perspective.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that in the environment that we're in today. So, it always comes down to budget, right? And certainly, Kelly, you gave some super points on what you're seeing in the different trends. But let me ask you this. Without adding much more to the budget, what are some creative ways that our audience today can think about really adding those different bells and whistles for a reasonable price?
Okay, hey Jeff. Yeah, this is actually one of our favorite internal topics over at Property Masters. We actually have several contests just with our internal staff. We have 80 project managers spread throughout the country, boots on the ground in our territories that really know their markets. And we try to encourage them, to work hand in hand with our customers that are, out there in the field, if they're local, smaller investors, or even, the large scale institutional investors. And we're dealing with somebody that's in an office 500 miles away. But we're trying to find creative ways to add value. So, and I'm not talking about doing things for free, but in the grand scope of the budget, what are ways that we can add some dimension and some interest and some customization into that renovation project so it doesn't look cookie cutter? It'll stand out from the rest of the homes in the area that may be on the market, even from other investors. And then obviously, as everybody knows, we have the interest of the iBuyers now in these marketplaces that are going in and blowing out renovations as well. So some of the things that we like to focus on are things like whitewashing a fireplace, or doing a German schmear instead of that traditional red brick fireplace, lightening and breaking it up. doing a lime wash on exterior brick. And I can actually talk about this right now because I have a pink brick house and it's been bothering me for years. And I finally took the COVID upgrade renovation plunge and I'm having it painted white. And I have never had so many neighbors stop by and want to talk about my house. I mean, we're kind of on a main thoroughfare. So just something sort of so simple that adds a whole new dimension to that house. And I mean, it's just catching people's attention. If you're going to keep existing cabinets, there's ways that you can add some pizzazz. You can add glass inserts and put up some LED lighting to make that kitchen kind of shine and brighten up. You can remove a wall of cabinets and put some reclaimed wood shelving. So not only is this sort of like, in line with that rustic farmhouse chic approach, but you're also opening up smaller kitchens that way. Right now a trend is small, especially and I keep talking about the millennial buyers, but smaller is better. The millennial buyers aren't into so much space as you were seeing homes being built in the 80s and 90s and even the 2000s. So with less space, you need more storage. So relocate those kitchen cabinets to the laundry room or to the garage to create, a man cave with cabinets and shelving. That's a good use of funds and a way to create some sort of a different look in that property. Something else I just did personally is I took off my traditional square wood mantle and I put up a reclaimed wood mantle. Whitewashed that fireplace. It's a completely different look. And in the grand scheme of things was relatively inexpensive. One more thing that we also kind of are in favor for, especially in a smaller home, is cleaning up the garage. Paint the garage floor, paint the garage walls, add some shelving. For a lot of men, especially if there's no basement, I mean, that's sort of like the space, the man cave. And believe it or not, for whatever the investment is, in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively a low dollar amount to clean up that garage and give it a bright finished look. It kind of sets the tone for the home. Hey, if the garage is this clean, this house must be in great shape. So those are a few ideas of things that we look to do. Obviously, you get into more expensive sort of suggestions when you're talking about knocking down walls, adding closets to rooms to create more bedrooms. But those are things that we will recommend to our clients as well.
Yeah, I think certainly all your comments were well taken, but a lot of the ideas that we're hearing from our customers about what they are doing with these smaller homes, because certainly a lot of people have gravitated to a backyard, but they don't necessarily want to be that far out of city center. We'll see how the COVID plays out with that, and a lot of these renovations have certainly led to the more dated properties that have smaller footprints. The garage, I find that comment really, really interesting. Are these garages being set up to actually be garages, or is it more, hey, look at this space, it's incredible the way you can sort of utilize it for all the different aspects other than storing your automobile? How does that work with your investors?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to storage space. When you're talking the average, home size and what people are looking for, people are looking to not have, it's the carbon footprint, not waste space, not have high utility bills. A lot of people, it's more important for them to be closer to the city center, and there's an affordability issue there, so they go smaller. You got to pick and choose. So storage is a big thing. I mean, you put up some shelves, you put up some cabinets in the garage, you polish that garage up, which traditionally when people think of garages, I mean, I know I'm embarrassed to say the way mine looks right now, but that could be, that could give somebody a feel for the house if they're, pulling up and entering through the garage and it looks immaculate and is freshly painted and there's storage there. And, there's the demographic of a young family with a guy with tools. I mean, they're going to need a place to store all that stuff. So I think that's just another way. You talk about curb appeal, putting up a new mailbox, sprucing up the front yard, having a nice foyer entrance. But the garage is also part of that entrance, at least in our perspective. And the feedback that we've gotten, both from, REO real estate agents and investors alike, is that that's a big selling point. And you're talking in the grand scheme of things, you can get that done for $600.
That's spectacular. And Brandon, let's stay on that money-saving ideas, right? What are you seeing coming out of your supply chain to your customers, different ways that people are really trying to pinch pennies from an investment standpoint that will give them that pop to get the bigger return on investment?
I think Kelly spoke to it pretty early on in her conversation, was really talking about the LVT flooring and some options there. I think a lot of our investors are just going full home and just ripping out carpet and putting putting LVT in across the board because the price has come down substantially over the past couple of years. And what it does for the home, it just transforms it. So it does give it a color, a pop, and it is pretty affordable when you're comparing recarpeting versus LVT at this point in time. So, to me, that's probably one of the larger expenditures that most people have as far as the flooring. I think that's come down pretty substantially.
And let me ask you that, Brandon. The LVT, certainly we've seen a huge increase on it. But maybe you could talk to our audience today about what the different options are, not only from a price, but a durability, and how they should think about that.
Yeah. There's a significant range of thickness in which you can get. So there is what we offer for a lot of basements and a lot of large commercial spaces. There's like a 2 millimeter with no wear layer that you can get that really is under $1 per square foot, and you can get a ton of it. And when you replace it, you can actually take up one of the strips of it versus having to rip up the entire floor. So there is some functional use to that. But then as you go up, there's 2 millimeter, 5 millimeter, 10. It goes all the way up as far as grades. I think that once the click floor for us is probably our top mover, and it's a mid range. So it's 5 millimeters, and it just moves. It's versatile, so you can put it into a bathroom, a kitchen, an entire basement if you wanted to use that, and it's durable. So I think that one, when you get a little bit higher, the price starts to escalate pretty quickly. So when you're doing a lot of square footage, that's probably what mostly moves, at least on our end.
Yeah, and Eric, I'm going to go right back to you with that same thought process, which is, if folks are moving to these various products, especially the LVT floors, and these different ways to sort of save money, but give it a pop. What are some of the best practices that your team at Home Depot is communicating to your renovators today?
Yeah, so Kelly, Brandon covered off on some great stuff. A couple of things that maybe would be other low-hanging fruit to think about. Never underestimate the power of a fresh entry door. It's easy to overlook, particularly if the existing one is in relatively decent condition, but something with a little bit more character or accent glass or something that gives it a pop from the curb is not an expensive thing to go do, and is fast and adds a lot to kind of the walk up on the home. You also can consider some very simple bath updates that don't have to be a full remodel. A simple floor set, a new vanity, and maybe some cleaned up fixtures. A couple $100, you're done, and it looks fantastic when you get through it. Those are ways to really transform a space without having to get into the full, the full nitty gritty, full on rehab for that space. Other things that are real simple to execute, they go up pretty fast and they add a lot of value, is having a consistent theme of light fixtures throughout the home, so that they all maybe not matchy, but on the same basic finish. That's a pretty quick repair and adds a lot of consistency, kind of flow to the home versus having to be piecemeal and left behind just because they were functioning.
Yeah, I would think light fixtures, easy, quick turnabout. You mentioned bathroom, right? And as renovators, and we see this all the time with our investment customers, certainly kitchen and bath. But I want to focus on the bath for just a quick second, Eric. A lot of people have options, tile versus, some other type of flooring. But more importantly is shower and things like that. Tile versus insert. How does that play durability-wise, cost-wise? I certainly see it on both sides. certainly from our customers at RCN, but, what do you see with renovations, tile versus insert, when it comes to the bath?
Yeah, we're experiencing a pretty even flip. I think it has a lot to do with, are we getting into a master bath or is it a guest or a hall bathroom? From a ease and durability and kind of maintenance perspective, inserts require less messing around when it comes to keeping them clean and or refreshing them when it's time to move on. But there's no comparison in terms of kind of the cool factor when it comes to an insert versus some contemporary tile and updated finishes in that space. So, but from one versus the other, I think we're pretty evenly split.
So that's interesting. And just on cost wise, and I know you can't ballpark it because tile's all over the map on sort of price per tile, but generally, what do people look at versus a cost of an insert versus a tile? Is it twice as much, half as much, just a little bit high level on that?
Yeah, I would say that the inserts go in if it's just a basic sized space. They go in a lot faster, so you're a lot lower on the labor impact for getting that project done. I would put in the ballpark of around half to have an insert done versus a tile set in a similar size space.
Yeah, absolutely. We're certainly seeing that now. A couple of folks have mentioned the new reality that we're in, so I do want to just talk just for a hot minute here on the COVID issue. And certainly, Tim, being a nationwide provider of inspection and property preservation and maintenance and things like that, how is your company dealing with the COVID, especially when it comes to projects that are underway, and maybe some best practices for our audience today that you're seeing?
Yeah, so it definitely has affected our business, obviously, across the country, and from area to area. It depends. It's a lot of it depends on the areas that we're in. So one of the things that we did right away was we changed some of our scripts inside of our application. So a lot of what we do is inspection of fix and flip progress. So how far along have the repairs been? How far are they along in the process? Sorry. And so one of the ways that we've done it is we allow the occupant of the property, if there is one, to provide the photos to our inspector. So our inspector will go on the outside of the property, kind of take the photos from the outside, and then the occupant would take them on the inside. And then the inspector would collect those via email or text message, and then we can submit those back to our client. So that's one of the ways. And then really just providing them, our folks in the field, with all of the necessary resources to make sure that they're complying with the CDC and all the guidelines there, so that when they do make contact with somebody, they know how to make them feel comfortable and not awkward when they're inside the property.
Yeah, I think certainly technology plays a much larger role today, especially when it comes to property showings and different renovations. So in different geographies across the nation where you're working, how have you handled those challenges of projects that are actually underway? And, how are you dealing with that, whether it be the local or the state authorities mandating what can and cannot do?
Yeah, so our business is actually considered an essential business, and we were able to supply the folks in the field with a letter that shows that they're an essential business because we service the financial sector. So we have run up against that in a few areas, but law enforcement is actually, as long as the vendor was able to show them, or the contractor was able to show them the letter that was provided that shows that we're an essential business, it really hasn't been a problem for us.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And of course, Kelly, you have a large footprint as well. And let's stay on this COVID theme for a minute. Is there any ideas that you have for our audience today on different challenges that you've come across over the 6 weeks that you've been able to overcome through your business? I love the idea of having a letter with all staff. How have you been handling it, Kelly?
Well, Jeff, we kind of saw the writing on the wall where things were going down mid-March. So we shut our office down on the 13th and went to action that weekend. We created a task force email and sort of boarded that with comprised of some of our HR people, our operations leaders, and IT. And we started encouraging our staff to utilize the task force email and report state updates on restrictions and local area restrictions, because it was impossible. And that, if you guys recall, those first 2 weeks to make heads or tails as all these governors were making their own decisions. So that was very instrumental in us being able to internally track that information and make it available both in weekly updates to our clients, to our staff, and our suppliers. We also had a separate tracking mechanism for permit offices and how they were handling COVID. For properties that we were tracking where we had a COVID incident, whether a crew member had, been sick. And then our last one was we were tracking suppliers. As Eric knows, Home Depot reduced their hours. Sherwin-Williams, which is our national paint supplier, started stating that it was all curbside. So we were tracking all that information as it came out and then talking to our national suppliers, making sure, hey, GE, you're a national appliance delivery company. Are you going to be shutting down factories? Are we going to have supply issues? Do you guys have extra distribution channels set up? We were worried about roofing materials because a lot of that stuff comes out of China. Are we going to be affected by this? So we were really hitting the pavement really early on. Obviously, communication is so important in our business. So we were jumping on Teams calls. We normally hold them once a month with me, the talking head, talking for 3 hours. These became weekly, making sure everybody jumped on these calls, having presentations that we could send out afterwards. We got the PPE equipment out early. Actually, Brandon's company helped us with that. We got the PPE sent out to our whole entire staff. They too carried the essential worker letter. Our counties and markets that were deemed non-essential, like Pennsylvania, and I mentioned this earlier, we early on make sure that we submitted waivers so we could have the ability to continue those projects. And I think really the vein that went through all of this with us is early action and clear thinking from different people in our organization and over communicating. We questioned, are we beating this COVID thing to death? But at the end of the day, most of our staff felt better working, and with that, they're more productive. So we had a few protocols. We stopped co-scope. We typically co-scope with agents or our clients or the investor out in the field. We encourage doing these virtually, FaceTime, via a phone call, and the same thing with the final walks, just to limit interaction. We would not allow multiple crews on the property, and the crews had to be 10 people or less. We encouraged e-commerce. We're doing actually Home Depot, and kudos to Eric, your stores. They've made curbside pickup and delivery really amazing for us. Our par rep has been great in that aspect. So, we try to give all of our business to Home Depot anyways, because, they're in Atlanta. We love Home Depot. And they just made it
right,
so much
while
simpler.
while I'm on the call.
So, in any event, those are some of the things that we did. We also limited any multifamily we weren't sending our estimators to, or the 50 plus communities. We were just trying to be good stewards in the community, balancing the fact that we're essential workers and we can get out there and get jobs done, keeping in mind that in the aftermath of this all, we're probably going to see an uptick. So it's important to get through this backlog of work that we have. And at the same time, protecting the community. So as far as, looking forward, I think a good benefit is that the e-commerce business and the way that we are able to now, we're set up to do delivery and stay out of the stores is going to save us time in the long run. And it's going to allow us to complete our projects a lot faster. So I know that's one benefit that my team hasn't experienced, along with, we talk silver linings. The fact that we've added a lot more crews because a lot of our crews couldn't do multifamily jobs or couldn't work in consumer homes. So they were coming to us, working in vacant properties, and we were getting access or have added access to a lot more crews, which is helping our timelines tremendously.
Yeah, truly a silver lining. The overarching problem, certainly the end of last year going into the beginning of this year, that we saw with so many of our customers on the lending front was they just didn't have access to folks who needed to do the work. So yeah, certainly we often wonder how silver linings are coming out of horrible situations. That's certainly one of them for the investment community. But Brandon, Kelly touched on a great point, which is the availability of certain products because of various supply chain issues and factories shutting down. How have you been handling the ability of being able to get those products out to your customers?
So I think as it pertains to some of the larger items like cabinets, so we're, as I spoke before, we're a large cabinet shop. We do a lot of importing in from both China, Vietnam, and Mexico, multiple lines of cabinets. And each one of those countries were impacted pretty substantially by COVID. And what we've had to deal with was early on, last year and into this year, you had tariffs, anti-dumping, and then you dealt with COVID. So we got punched 3 times. So it was great that we had had the foresight to kind of diversify that into other markets so that we were less susceptible to being completely shut down. So COVID started impacting the supply chains probably a lot sooner than what's taken place in the United States. So, Chinese New Year normally is about 15 business days. This year it was closer to 60. So how, as a wholesale distributor that has locations all over the country, it's really hard to be able to know what your demand is going to be and then getting it in quick enough to support your customers and clients. So what we've really tried to do is just be proactive, and to Kelly's point, we're over communicating with our clients in regards to what cabinets are going to be available, what our container schedule is coming in, and letting them get in front of it so they know how to plan their renovations. But we've dealt with it as good as we possibly can, and I think that through this, we've looked for ways in knowing that there's a moratorium on foreclosures for 60 days. So we knew that a lot of the REO items that we carry were probably going to slow down. So in short order, we built a PPE almost like headquarters of everything from KN95s, 3-ply masks, gloves, Lysol wipes, and Clorox wipes, and any sanitizers. We've really built a really good product mix, which has helped us really diversify and help a lot of we try to stay in our core customer base. So we're supplying real estate agents with everything from kits to be able to offer at showings. So shoe booties and gloves, and we've done that across the board for a lot of clients, to Kelly's point earlier. So we've diversified and we've tried to offer PPE materials to everybody in our space.
I appreciate that. And Eric, I'm going to have you finish up on this topic. Any best practices for the investment community out there on how to interact with you? Certainly Home Depot, what a footprint you have across the nation. What are some best practices on the investment community and how they can interact with you right now?
Well, I don't want to speak for the retail business. My line of expertise and reach is really around our labor program and our renovation services. But as far as interacting with us goes, we've remained open for business for the duration. We are expanding reach and capabilities and building out teams all the time. And in terms of interacting with us, we're a collaborative and engaged partner that can help you solve repair strategies from simple fix and flip type things all the way through to major remodels. We've got access to our own in-house supply chain, which has us kind of differentiated as a labor aggregator, and we're always entertaining new partnerships.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, Kelly touched on this, which is construction crews looking for work. And certainly, have you been seeing any challenges encountering with the construction and the current environment? And, how are you overcoming them at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the team ahead of me here described a lot of the challenges we're experiencing in the environment. The need to work with smaller crews definitely has been slowing things down, but that in general has been something that we've just been very transparent about and being very, very vocal about keeping the jobs moving. As far as folks looking for work, yeah, the teams are busy. The heading into this year, we felt like availability of labor was going to be a major pressure, and I don't think that has let up tremendously. These teams and these resources are, they're heavily sought after. A lot of competition for their time and attention. We haven't experienced a whole lot of let up in that just yet.
Fantastic. So I'm going to switch gears here, everyone. We have a tremendous number of questions, and for our audience today, feel free to go to the question box on your screen and add some questions. But I do want to get started a little earlier than normal because there's really some great questions. Most of these as follow-ups on what our panel has been providing today, and certainly we talked a little bit about home technology and things, how it applies. And Kelly, I'm going to start with you. There's a great question that was directed to you. Is there any age home that is not a good fit, thinking about adding some of the smart technologies? And I would broaden this question to think about age of home and how the customer needs to think about it from a renovation standpoint. What are your thoughts on that, Kelly?
No, I mean, I really don't think that there's an age or, even a price point that you consider. Obviously you consider your acquisition cost and what your overall repair value is, but you don't have to go all in. You can make small changes. The Nest thermostats, for example. Again, in the grand scheme of things, if you have to replace the thermostat anyways, why not go with the Nest? It's an attractive selling feature. It's more efficient energy-wise. Is it going to be the final decision maker in what sells the home? Maybe not, but it's something when somebody's walking through, it's an extra little bell and whistle. Oh, this is nice. They put some thought into this. There's been some care placed in this home regarding the decisions that were made for renovation. So I don't think it boils down to being able to look at a home and say, well, this is an older home. It's, not worth trying to build this as a smart home. I think it's really just, you have to look at your total budget, and keep into account, know your demographic, know the market, know what people are going to be expecting in that area. Rural properties that are, in the deep South, it may not make it, it may not be a smart decision to go that route, but if it's an older condo, or a townhome in South Florida, yeah, definitely you could build that as a smart home still, even with age. So I think it's hard to dial in and put a parameter in place per se on what projects you can put technology elements in. I think you just have to look at you have to consider all factors.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Sort of staying on the finishings model here, we had quite a bit of discussion today about the various flooring models, and we've had a couple of follow-up questions. Brendan, I'll throw this to you as to what is appropriate to get rid of carpeting in the home. Are we seeing carpeting being removed from bedrooms? Is there any areas where carpeting should still rule? A couple of questions on that.
It's a good question. We've seen, to the point earlier about time is money, I think that a lot of people and investors and even people who are buying the properties would replace, even if in a master suite you decided to go LVT flooring, a lot of people are just buying area rugs that would potentially go underneath to make it a little bit warmer. But I still think that we're seeing across the board a lot of fix and flippers that we have just changed spec, and a lot of our fix and flippers are very regimented, very similar to Kelly, I'm sure, is that they're putting the same plumbing fixtures, the same lighting fixtures, the same, based on if it's a good, better, best scenarios, and trying to keep specs consistent. And we've seen a very large transition of going away from carpet in general, maybe keeping carpet for stairs and certain things like that. But for the most part, we've seen a large regression just from our carpet sales that we've done through Sherwin.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with that. While we're a nationwide lender, it has been far and wide that our rehab lists that come into RCN, which, we run through a whole due diligence process internally. But I got to tell you, the carpet is just about gone now. We hardly ever see carpeting on our rehab list that we fund back to our investor. Another great question here, Eric, speaking about colors and things like this, do you see any change aside from the gray? I think Kelly was on point with the gray, but are you seeing anything aside from the grays? A couple of questions on this.
No, I'll definitely reinforce Kelly's comments. Gray is definitely the palette of the day. Maybe if any shifting a little more steps in the bolder direction, where it's not necessarily like simple super light Dover gray, but maybe getting a little more daring and having some offset and darker gray walls, but or a big contrast between the walls and the floors. But no, gray is the thing. And now the hot debate is what's the right color of finishes to go in with the gray in terms of like hinges and knobs and fixtures and things like that. But yeah, no, I would echo that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and Kelly, I'll throw it back to you. We have a couple of people asking, are lighter floors coming back? Are you seeing that trend? And, I would add on, is it a geography thing, right? Dark versus light, or is it all over your footprint that you're seeing?
We are predominantly lighter floors. I mean, I'll just touch back. A lot of this approach that we take and that we sort of, recommend for our clients is based on personal preference, but also we look at, the market and that particular area. So lighter floors to me open the space up, particularly in smaller homes. I think the flooring choice, just in the age of COVID, when everybody's going to be so concerned about cleanliness, I know me personally, I walk into a home and I'm like, what's underneath that carpet? You just imagine dirt being held in there for years. So I think a clean, lighter floor really sets the tone. And you talk about these little nuances that are going to roll off the COVID situation as we move forward. I think that will sort of have more of a lasting impact of making sure that home appears very clean and fresh and bright and open. I mean, that's how people are geared to think now, and just even this very short time span. So as far as floors, yeah, lighter is what we prefer, and it's what we're seeing more of in the market, both in LVT, in tile, LVP, pretty much any surface that we put in.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Tim, we're going to switch topics a little bit here on this question from somebody who's interested in the rental aspects of things. Are you seeing any sort of change in rental receipts and how customers are paying? And I would throw on top of that, for any of the landlords in the audience today, what are some best practices that you could share in collecting those rents?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely, I think that it's definitely started to catch up. I mean, if you even just look at, I think the unemployment rate this morning they were saying was 14.4%, and I was part of a conference last week where they were just talking about they were comparing this to the crash in 2008, and the general consensus was that in 2008, it mostly affected, the mortgagers or people that had a home mortgage. But this is far more reaching because it does affect your renters. And so we've had a lot of clients that have reached out to us and have asked to begin the inspections process, even just to knock on the door and drop off some type of communication on how they can get back in touch with the management company, because a lot of these people that may have issues paying right now may have never had an issue paying ever in their life. They may not. They may just pay their it comes out of their direct deposit or out of their checking account every month, and all of a sudden now they're faced with needing to get a hold of a management company, and they don't know how to do that. So a lot of our clients have asked us to drop off just literature or a contact card even about how they can get in touch with them. And I think Kelly made the point earlier, but communication and over communication right now, it seems to be the trend. Even when it comes to that, the renter landlord management company relationship.
It's really, really well said. And unfortunately, folks, we have reached the top of the hour. I must tell you, this was one of the most in-depth panels that we've had so far, and we've had some great ones. Certainly a big thank you to Eric, Kelly, Brandon, and Tim. The information that you provided to our audience today is going to go a long way to ensuring that best practices across the nation are adhered to, and I cannot thank you enough. And once again, a big thank you to Suzanne and Robert from REI Inc., who continue to put together these panels, and such a privilege to be able to moderate them. Just really, really outstanding job. So thank you to everyone. Next week, same time, we will be getting in depth on our next topic. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.